Hey guys, Pastor Greg Locke here. So I just read a hilarious article on the stark contrast between me and Reverend Al Sharpton in regards to our biblical stance on the Syrian refugee crisis. Well, first of all, I'm glad that even the liberal media can see that he and myself are way different and have glaring differences. Let me begin this video by saying this. If you think that Reverend Al Sharpton is a Bible preacher, then I'm a Japanese navigator. So let me say a few things about the foolishness of his statement that Jesus was a refugee, therefore we ought to receive refugee. Luke 19:10 says that Jesus came to seek and to save that which was lost. He didn't come to be a refugee, he came to be a redeemer. So why is it you say in your false dichotomy we have to receive refugees because Jesus was a refugee? Why don't you teach the whole Bible that people ought to receive Jesus because he said himself in John 14:6 that he's the only way to the kingdom of God? But I don't hear you preaching about that. It's so interesting that people who don't even believe the Bible want to cherry pick and use the Bible to ramrod those of us who actually know what it says. So here's why his statement is stupid. First of all, Jesus did not go into Egypt as a child to become a refugee. Jesus went into Egypt as a child to fulfill the messianic prophecy of the book of Hosea to prove that he indeed was the Messiah and was going to fulfill every jot and every tittle of the law. Furthermore, he didn't stay there. He actually went back home. He didn't sit around and be taken care of by everyone else's nickel. And then the question is, isn't the church, aren't believers supposed to love people and have compassion? And the answer is absolutely yes. We are called to love people. We are called to love individuals. We are never called to love ideologies. The refugee resettlement program is nothing more than an ideology. I'm not called to love that. I'm called to love individual people. So before you start throwing Christians under the bus for having no compassion, you have to ask yourself this very common sense question. How many do we actually have to take before it becomes the Christian thing to do? Do we take one? Do we take 10? Do we take 10,000? Do we take 1,000,000? How many refugees do we have to resettle in order to be considered Christian? Let that sink in. Ask yourself that question. And before all you liberals start lecturing we freedom-loving Americans, why don't you lecture the neighbors of these people from which they are fleeing? Because apparently none of those countries want anything to do with them, and they have plenty of resources to take care of these folks, but they're not knocking on their door. There's a reason why. So here's two thoughts in closing. Number one, precautionary and discriminatory are two very different things. And then secondly and lastly, Al Sharpton, please stay away from issues in which you have absolutely no idea what you're talking about.